Hello and welcome to Real Opinions, and today I'm going to be reviewing the final piece of story DLC for Fallout 4, Nuka-World. So Nuka-World's actually a much bigger piece of DLC than I actually thought it was going to be. I don't know why, but I was under the impression it was going to be like Mechanist. No, what was it called? Automatron. The size of that, like a few hours. But it's actually a pretty big expansion. It's not quite Far Harbor size, but it's big. There's lots to do. So let's get right into it because there's a lot to talk about. So it begins with you receiving a radio signal, like all these DLCs do, that leads you to Nuka-World. You hop on like a train that I suppose was meant to be for the tourists to actually get there back in the day before the bombs fell. And once you're there, you realize it's a trap organized by these raiders in what's called the Gauntlet. So it's like a little maze obstacle course that these raiders set up for victims as a form of entertainment, really. And you have to make your way through the gauntlet, bypassing these traps, fighting off turrets and a few enemies. It's quite fun, actually, because I sometimes get a little annoyed with the dungeons in Fallout 4. There can just be long stretches of just fighting enemies over and over again. But because this was so focused on traps, making your way through hazardous environments, it was a little bit different. So you do all this, and then at the end, you fight the leader of this gang. This isn't a spoiler, this is how it opens. You have to fight him in like a repurposed bumper car arena, dodgems, whatever you call them. And once you've defeated him, you immediately become the leader of Nuka-World, the overboss, that's what they call him. And what you've got to do is liberate all of the areas of this park, Nuka-World, and sort of divide up the spoils between these three separate gangs, trying to balance them and keep them happy. So it's very much episodic in structure. It's go to this part of the park, liberate it, go to this part of the park, liberate that. But it's fun because each area of the park is different. It's a mixed bag, I'll grant you that, but you've got the there's like the Animal Kingdom, which is obviously was the Safari Park. The Galactic Zone, which is all space themed. There's Dry Rock Gulch, which is a western area. There's the Kiddie Kingdom, and there's like a sort of tour of a bottling plant. And obviously this is all very much based on Disneyland. It's very, very overt. It's not subtle in that at all. And the attention to detail is incredible. I think that's my favourite thing about Fallout 4. I was thinking about it before, and I've written a lot on Fallout 4, and I've talked about Fallout 4 a lot, and I think it always comes back to what I like is the attention to detail in the environments, the way that you kind of get a feel for what the world was like in the environments, the way that you kind of get a feel for what the world was like before the bombs fell, because there are problems with the game that I won't deny, but I think one thing that they really do well is the sort of visual design and the visual storytelling that tells you a bit more about the world building, that kind of stuff. They do it really well, and I think Nuka-World's one of the best examples of that. You walk around this park and you really feel like it's a real place. They've got all the little things that you expect in real parks there to a T. It's really, really, really impressive, and it makes it a fun place to just walk around, which is good because so much of this is walking around and clearing areas of enemies, so it's good that the level design is at least fun. In terms of those 5 parks, you've got Kiddie Kingdom. That's easily the best. I don't want to spoil it, but basically you go in and you have to hunt down this one guy who's like setting up traps and irradiating you and unleashing ghouls on you that have been painted to look like clowns, which is great. And you go through like the fun house, and you have to like through the magician show and through the tunnels of this like roller coastery ride. It's really fun, really inventive, particularly the bit in the fun house. It's very different from the rest of the game, even though it is just another dungeon area for you to clear. You've got all the things that you expect in the fun house. Like there's this bit where you go through these spinning tunnels, and it's really, really nauseating, but in a good way. It felt like a real ride, and I really liked that. The Galactic Zone is filled with robots, and it's probably the biggest. I got the impression it was the biggest of all the zones. That one's good because you get it's all split up into lots of different rides there, and that's got the big roller coaster that you can go on. It's like an imaginary tour through a space zone with like alien animatronics shooting you and stuff, and that's kind of neat. The problem I had with that zone was that it was very much go around fighting robots. You have to collect these things called star cores, and it got very, very samey after a while there, in my opinion. Dry Rock Gulch was potentially my second favourite, I think. That's the Wild West zone, and there you've got these new little enemies that are like tremors from, the movie Tremors, like worm creatures. They're fun to fight. And the way you have to get through that one and sort of solve the conflict there is by going through like what's essentially a tour of the park, but guided by these robots that obviously still think the park's open and are still performing as they normally would. So you have to do all these activities like find horses and bring them into the stables, or do a draw with the robot in the middle of the street, like an Old West showdown. That stuff's really creative and fun. I loved that. Then we got the bottling plant that I told you about. That's the worst by far. It's just filled with what's these Nuka lurks. They're just reskinned Maya lurks. It's quite lazy. They're just blue. And you just go through there and you literally, all you do is clear it out of enemies. So that was a bit dull. And then there's Afari Park, which is kind of fun because it has this character there that I won't spoil because he's kind of interesting and different. But it involves you dealing with these mutated alligator creatures, but it's got a bit more of a story to it, that one, than some of the others do. So that's the gist of it, is you go around these 5 parks and you clear them out. But that's not all either. There's some side quests. You got one with a cult that lives on the outskirts of the park. That one's a little bit fun. There's a lot of collecting based ones, but they're actually kind of decent. There's one where you got to collect these park medallions for the like robot mascot of the park, and you'll get a prize for it. And it's kind of fun because it makes you look around the rides properly. Then there's one about collecting bottle caps or something. Again, very kind of basic filler quests, but they made it a bit more fun because exploring the park is so much fun. There's an arcade. That's kind of interesting. So you go into the arcade and you can play whack-a-mole, but I think it's called whack-a-commie. There's a shooting gallery. There's basketball hoops. You play all these games and you get tickets, and then you can redeem the tickets for like Raider-themed items, like new weapons or new armor or whatever. Interesting. It's a nice little touch. I kind of liked that. One of the things I did really like was the emphasis obviously is on Nuka-Cola in this game, and there's lots of different new flavors of Nuka-Cola that you can get, and they give you different perks, and you can mix them at the Nuka-Cola stations to kind of come up with your own combinations, and that's genuinely a lot of fun. I enjoyed like looking for different bottles, putting them together to kind of get new combinations. That was genuinely I'm normally not a big fan of all this crafting stuff, but I kind of liked that. The big draw for a lot of people is that you get to be a raider with this expansion. I wasn't that excited. I was more excited to explore the park myself. I like the new areas, I like the new enemies and things like that. But yeah, you get to be a raider, and I suppose the appeal is supposed to be this is the first time in Fallout 4 that you're ever allowed to be genuinely evil. You can put slave collars on people, you can lead your raider camps into old settlements from the Commonwealth, from the main hub game, and you can just massacre people, or you can kick them out of their homes by talking to them. There's lots of interesting things you can do there, either leading raids or trying to persuade people to give up their homes. Is this fun? It's very Radiant questy, just kind of like randomized, like I'll now go here and take out these enemies, so it can get a bit repetitive, but it's fun for a little bit. And I do like all the new raider settlement crafting stuff you can do. Like there's new raider traps that you can build to defend the places. They're cool. And obviously you can build like chem dealer spots to sort of keep the raiders happy. I don't know, this settlement management thing has never been for me, and I think I prefer doing it with raiders than I did to doing it with the Minutemen, but it is still just the same thing. Go to a place, clear it out, establish it as an area, build stuff to keep people happy. Even if it's raider themed, it feels a bit similar, and it's not really for me. And then there are these kind of randomly generated quests you can do for the 3 gang leaders. They're boring. I didn't like them at all. And they involve you traveling back and forth between Nuka-World and the Commonwealth, which I felt pointless because I wanted to be in Nuka-World for this expansion, and B, it just makes the loading time so irritating. You just spend more time in loading times than you do actually doing those quests, and you don't get many caps for them, so I thought they were totally pointless, and I just basically ignored them after I did a couple to give it a try. As for what I was saying, you have these 3 gangs. You have the Pack, who are kind of animal themed. They keep like a pen of mutated creatures. They all dress up as different animals from the zoo. They're fun. They're kind of like the savage group. There's the Operators, who are kind of the stealthy, more level-headed ones, as their name suggests, that they kind of treat it all a lot more seriously. They're less like raiders and more like really kind of mercenaries, I suppose. And then there's the Disciples, who are just raiders. That's all they are. They're just normal raiders. And basically, when you're dividing up Nuka-World, after you liberate each place, or when you're going to the Commonwealth and you're establishing new camps, you have to kind of try and balance who gets what, because otherwise they get jealous, and that can lead to one of them betraying you, which happened to me. I lost one of the disciples got kind of pissed with me, and I had to fight them off at the end. What else is there? There's a new radio station, which I found incredibly annoying. I had to turn it off straight away because it repeats way too often. I swear there's like 3 shows that he does, and you just listen to them on a loop, and they're not even funny. It's like Raider Radio, so it's supposed to be what raiders want to hear, and it's just like this guy talking about, you know, the good old days of raiding, and it's not funny. It's annoying. There's no music. I didn't ever listen to it. The only thing I kept it on for was just to hear the news updates after I'd done quests, because I like hearing what they say about what I've done. There is a new companion who is a bit boring. You talk to him. It's supposed to be like a raider, so I guess the idea was like, oh, you can now have an evil companion. That'll be fun, right? But he's just whiny, needy, and he just pulls you over every 5 minutes to go, hey boss, I just want to say thanks, I can trust you, I'm going to give you a monologue about my life story. And I'm sat there going, God, shut up, like he rambles on, and I'm trying to do a quest, or I'm trying to go find something, or I'm in the middle of like a dungeon, and he's just babbling on, rambling about nothing. And at the end of it, I was like, what was I supposed to get from that? I get it, you were once a raider, and now you work for me, and you're happy about like that. Shut up. So I think the more I talk about it, the more I realise that my problems with this expansion are mainly to do with the characters. A lot of the raider bosses are boring. This new raider's boring. The new radio DJ's annoying. There's not as many of the fun robot characters as you get in some of the game. I mean, like I said, there's a park mascot that's kind of cool. And some of the robots in the Dry Rock Gulch area are good, but generally speaking, I felt like the characters were a bit boring, which is a shame, because in Far Harbor, they weren't. Far Harbor's definitely the better expansion. It's much more open-ended. It's much more choice-based. It feels like a proper game into itself. Nuka-World's just a fun little distraction. I liked being a raider more than I thought I would, and I really loved the area. The Nuka-World itself is definitely the best part of this expansion. It's a really well realized location, a lot of fun things to do. I genuinely enjoyed liberating 5 areas. That was my personal favorite part, because I liked that each one had its own theme. It didn't mean that some were better than others, as I said, but the kiddie zone and for Dry Rock Gulch, I felt like I almost got my money's worth just with those 2 areas, because they were a lot of fun. Overall, I would say that this is probably the second best expansion for Fallout 4. Far Harbor's definitely the standard, but this is fun too. I'd say that if you want to be a raider, if that whole thing appeals to you, I'm sure you'll like this, because they've really kind of established it as something that you can go into a fair bit of depth with all the getting new outposts, getting settlements. Then you have to like establish supply chains. You can sort of fight in a raider arena. You can do all these jobs for the raiders. You can, like I said, you can do slavery and things. So if you want to be a raider, if you want to be a bad guy, this should satisfy that itch. I thought it was a bit weird though that they've had this as the last expansion, because it's like, oh yeah, you know all these settlements that you've been building and working with and supporting for like a year now. Yeah, well now you can kill them. And it's like, I would have done that. I genuinely would. That would have been the first thing I'd do. The first thing that I'd do with the game if it was introduced from the off, but now that I've been establishing for a year, I kind of don't want to raid them. But anyway, that's a small criticism. So if you want to do the raider stuff, that's great. If you want to explore a new area of map that's creative and fun and a little bit different, all that's taken care of. If you like new loot, I felt like I got quite a lot of loot from this. New weapons, new armor, new power armor, of course, all the Nuka-Cola beverages. There's these things called persuasion grenades now that you can throw to kind of coerce people into doing what you want. That's all neat. Yeah, there's a lot here. I just got a bit annoyed with all the back and forthing between the Commonwealth and Nuka-World itself, and I got a bit annoyed with some of the characters, but it is a lot of fun to play, and I would give this either a 7 or an 8. I'm kind of torn at the moment. If all 5 zones were up to the same standard as the Dry Rock Gulch and the Kiddie Zone, I might have given it an 8. But let's let's be harsh and go with a 7. But I'd still recommend it. I mean, if you got the season pass like I do, there's absolutely no reason not to play it at all. Oh, and I love the new song. The new Coca-Cola song is fun. I got that in my head. I say I got it in my head, I don't know the words. It's so high-pitched. Yeah, no, it's fun. It's a fun expansion. It just has some problems.